Yeah, I know you guys wonder why we still talk about Baltaser. Well, here we talk about leadership and people in government and stuff like that. So that's why we're talking about Baltaser. Well, there's this woman, one of the women that had an affair with Baltaser, and we're in that video that got leaked. And this woman, this is just a follow up on the story. This woman said that her husband wants to divorce her, and I'm like, are we supposed to be surprised? Anyway, watch this video and hear the commentary. And she was speaking, I think she was speaking in French, but it was being transcribed in English. But it makes an interesting listen. So yeah, just watch the video, leave us a comment, and if you've not subscribed, please make sure you subscribe and you click the notification bell so that we can keep you notified when we release a new video. And check out some of other videos. But yeah, just watch the video, okay?
This woman named Esther Muking is one of the more than 200 women who appeared in the scandalous picture of having sex with Baltaser in Gonga. Today, this woman's life is not good because she was fired from her job because of those videos. A few days ago, this woman posted a video about how she met Baltaser and how they had sex. Here there is her voice speaking what happened. I had a short-term affair 2 years ago and never told my husband. There are two things I need you to know before I share my story. The first is that I have no excuse or justification for what I did. It was flat out wrong and the worst mistake. I've walked through much guilt and regret both during and after. The second is this: you would never guess that I would do this. I'm sensible and caring, to a fault. I'm your kid's Sunday school teacher and baseball team mom. I brought you dinner when you had your baby, and you come to me for advice about your marriage because it looks like I have it all figured out. I give and don't ask for much. I have a knack for making people feel known but feel like nobody knows me. And it was in this place of giving and emptiness and loneliness that I was vulnerable. I had been acquainted with Baltaser in Gonga for over 5 years through church. Yes, when I screw up, I go all in. Our interactions never went beyond small talk because it would seem we have nothing in common. My PTA mom reputation was a sharp contrast to his eyes, rough around the edges, persona. But we did have a shared taste in music, and that was our initial connection. At some point he offered to help me out around the house with some long neglected honeydews, and maybe I'm naive, but that didn't throw up any red flags. We'd talk while he worked and got to know each other's stories. He learned that I felt like I was dying inside, and I learned that he didn't feel special or manly at home. We started private messaging on Facebook, and at that point, I felt it was getting a little sketchy. But I also knew I wasn't looking for trouble and was certain that I could easily shut it down if it crossed the line. The funny thing is, the friendly messages turned flirty, and the flirty messages turned into us wondering what a kiss would be like, then finding a way to make that happen. And so on. He made me feel alive. I made him feel like a real man again. Need, attraction, and opportunity combined, and the situation got very out of hand. The whole time I knew it had to stop, and I just very suddenly told him so after 2 months. He was very casual and blasé, it was clearly no big deal to him. So, on top of everything else, I had the hurtful realization that I had been totally played. At that point, the question was, how do I move on from here? I immediately got back into therapy to figure out why I had acted out so badly, what need I was trying to meet, and how to grieve this negative experience. But central to this moving on was deciding whether or not to tell my husband about the affair. On the one hand were the arguments in favor of telling him. Honesty compelled me to tell. It would be irrefutable proof to my husband that my life had gone off the rails and that we needed to restore our relationship. My prior suggestions that something was wrong had fallen on deaf ears. It would make me feel better. I was carrying this intense burden of guilt, sadness, and anger all by myself, not having confided in anybody except my therapist. Plus, I was almost certain he could forgive me and we could move past it in time. On the other hand were the compelling reasons for not telling him. He would never trust me again. If I told him, we would most certainly have to leave our church. This is the only church our kids have ever known, and my husband and I are both very involved in church leadership and ministry. Our abruptly leaving would disrupt not only our family, but also hurt the many people who count on us there. And on top of everything else, I couldn't take our church home away from him. This was a short-term, 2-month affair with no emotional ties whatsoever. This was not my soulmate or some long-lost love. Baltaser Ngonga was not even somebody I would choose to be friends with, if I'm being honest. He was more a symptom of my dysfunction than any threat to my marriage. I was, and remain, certain that Mark will never tell his wife, so the risk of my husband finding out is minuscule. If I thought that was a realistic possibility, I would certainly have told him myself, rather than having him find out in some other way. My husband did nothing to deserve the pain it would cause him. It's true that things aren't perfect between us, but he sacrifices so much for our family. The least I can do is spare him the fallout of my bad decisions. Ultimately, I decided that not telling was the best course of action because it minimized the number of people hurt by my actions. It was the best way for me to put the situation behind me. Since then, I've worked to address my feelings of emptiness. I've looked at my husband through new eyes, considering the things that Baltaser Ngonga found lacking in his marriage. I now make sure that my husband knows he's special. I've loved on him a lot, partly out of guilt, but my taking that step toward him has helped our relationship. It's a work in progress. As for Baltaser Ngonga, he and I avoid each other, if at all possible. And when contact can't be avoided, we just ignore each other, not even exchanging pleasantries. That used to be hard and hurt, but now it's just something that feels dead and makes me slightly nauseous. But about 6 months ago, I joined another organization with a better paycheck. And that's when things started to spiral out of control. If you would have asked me then if I would have ever cheated on my husband, you would have had me banish the thought in a flash. But life, as they say, can take interesting and unpredictable turns along the way. Experiencing my freedom. At first, I was nervous to not have him around me to depend on. But within a couple of weeks, I fit right into my new workplace and everything was perfect. The people were great and a lot of fun. At the same time, I met Baltaser Ngonga in my new workplace who had a huge crush on me. He constantly asked me out and flirted with me. It was a laugh at first, and soon enough, I was having a lot of fun flirting back with him. It was harmless and a new experience, and that thought excited me. Life with my husband. My husband and I wanted to move in together, but we put that thought away for a few more months because of my new job and its schedule. We spent our evenings together and an occasional weekend too, when he wasn't hanging out with the boys. I don't know where we went wrong, but somewhere along the way, things started to get on edge. He started asking me a lot of questions about my workplace and I started getting annoyed with his constant calls during my busy work hours. Somehow, we just weren't getting used to the fact that we weren't around each other anymore. When I missed him, he was busy. When he missed me, I was busy. It was very frustrating. Soon, we started fighting over petty things. Eventually, I started to believe that my husband been taking me for granted all this while. He wouldn't like meeting me over weekends because he was busy doing something else or hanging out with his friends. So I started taking him for granted. I pretended like I was busy during the weekdays. I started to like the attention, and in the midst of all this confusion in my love life, Baltaser Ngonga from office, who had a crush on me, started asking me out more often. Eventually, I yielded one evening and we went out for a drink. And it was so awesome. I had such a nice time with Baltaser, who was such a charmer and smooth talker. I couldn't stop thinking about him and was secretly waiting for him to ask me out again. He did ask me out again for lunch the next day. Soon enough, a Baltaser who liked me started wooing me. He took me out to fancy dinners and splurged on extravagant gifts and diamonds. We watched movies and had candlelight dinners. But my husband had no idea of any of this, taking the next plunge into lust. One day, after a bitter fight with my husband over the phone, I called Baltaser, who had a crush on me, and asked him to take me out because I wasn't feeling too good. He drove to my place immediately and we went to get a few drinks. I liked him a lot because he was always there for me. He cared for me and pampered me, something my husband seemed to have forgotten recently. And on the way back home, we shared our first kiss. I really liked it. I invited him back to my place and the next thing I knew, we were making drunken love on my bed. I felt better than I felt for the last 6 years with my husband. I felt weak and passionate, like a fire that has awakened within me. I loved every single emotion I was feeling. He wasn't my boyfriend, but I just liked him a lot. But deep inside I loved my own boyfriend and knew this guy could never take my boyfriend's place. But each time I made love with this Baltaser who had a crush on me, it made me feel good because I felt like I was getting back at my husband for treating me badly. Stepping deeper into the fields of lust, I knew I cheated on my husband, but somehow it didn't feel bad. Instead, I felt bold and empowered. I even felt powerful. I wanted more. There was Baltaser who used to like me. I liked him too, but I couldn't do anything about it because I was dating my husband. And he knew that. I called him up and started flirting with him. Soon enough, we planned a date that evening. That very night, I got him into my bed and had the best sex of my life, for the second time in a week. I was having so much fun juggling 3 rounds in bed with Baltaser from work and it felt like a dream come true. At that point, I knew I only loved my husband and no other guy, but the buffet of sex I was having was making me delirious. All of a sudden, I loved my life. My ignorant husband comes back. It's easy to see why I stopped caring about my husband and our petty fights anymore. I told husband wanted a break from the relationship. He thought I was upset about the petty fights. My husband had no idea it was because I hated getting his calls while I was having sex with my new love. He tried to woo me back. He came to me in tears and asked me if we could work on our relationship. I loved him, but I was confused. Did I really want to go back to that? But today I regret for having relationship with Baltaser in Gonga. I cheated on him by kissing and having sex with Baltaser. I went out with Baltaser and we ended up kissing and taking pictures together. My husband saw the pictures and that's how he found out. Right now he has spoken to me and he is willing to work things out, we just aren't together right now. He told me I have to gain his trust back and I am willing to do that. I cut off contact with the Baltaser. I have given which is my husband, but I guess you can say he's not RN, my phone password *** Instagram password. He did tell me he went out with this girl who is his friend, but she does want to be more, but he doesn't see her that way. He told me he didn't do anything with her and did tell her that he loves me and just told her things didn't end well. He didn't go with her because we were together and the girl called his phone 4 times. He blocked her. He has told me how he feels, which is betrayed and hurt, and I wish I could take his pain so he doesn't feel it because I truly regret what I did. It's just what can we do now to fix things and help us get to an even better place than we were before. Today my husband wants to divorce me. Let me tell you how I met my husband, who wants to divorce me after Baltaser in Gonga sex scandal. I was single for about 2 years prior to meeting Matt and using a Jewish dating service called Date to Meet Men. In my master's degree program, there were only women. I went on online dates, lots of them. I basically dated everyone in the tri-state area. Sometimes I went on 1 or 2 dates with some of the men before deciding we want a good match, and others I dated for about a month. None of them amounted to anything substantial. After I reached my quota of bad dates, I would go off date for months at a time. I was once again contemplating going off date when a man sent me a message. His profile picture was in poor lighting, and he was wearing a multicolored striped shirt with a very loud tie. I had dated online long enough to know that if a guy is hiding in his picture, it's never a good sign. On top of that, he kept bragging about how wonderful he was and how he was waiting for the perfect woman. Bad profile picture plus arrogant equals loud warning bells. I had a rule that I would only meet men on my tough Brooklyn for the first date. I once had a guy drive for 2 hours to meet me. This guy told me he worked in Manhattan, and if I wanted to meet, I'd have to travel to him. I don't know how this conversation turned into me consenting to take the bus and train to Manhattan to meet him. It is one of the great mysteries in my life. Was it divine intervention or did I have temporary insanity? One will never know for sure. All I know is that on October 25, 2007 at approximately 6 p.m., I stood in front of an H&M waiting to meet this guy. I remember cursing myself out in my head for agreeing to this until I saw a man walking towards me smiling. With that one look, my love story began. The best way to explain it is that I felt like time stopped at that moment. It was a feeling I had never experienced. I think I stopped breathing as I looked at this guy and knew instantly that my life was about to change forever. He gave me a hug and we went to a restaurant to eat. The food was terrible, but the conversation more than made up for it. He was extremely attractive, but more importantly, he was smart, funny, witty, and down to earth, nothing like how he came across in his messages. I knew I would marry him. I excused myself, then I joked with him that if I didn't come back in 10 minutes, that I had probably climbed out the bathroom window. Then I walked to the bathroom, took out my phone, and told my mom that I had met my husband. I was going to marry this man I had just met named Matthew. He suggested that we go bowling, but the bowling alley was only taking reservations. We decided to go to Central Park instead, and we walked over to the Belvedere Castle. It was where we had our first kiss. Afterwards we sat on a park bench and talked for hours. It was getting late, so he hailed me a cab. He told me to text him when I got home to ensure I arrived safely. I was in a haze the entire ride home. We were pretty much inseparable after our first date, and it was only 3 weeks later that he told me he loved me. As silly as it might seem, I felt that way too. Our first vacation was filled with Mano. Within a few months we planned a weekend getaway upstate. The evening that we arrived at the hotel, Matt started feeling unwell. By the next morning he had a high fever, and we immediately returned home. Blood work was drawn, and the tests revealed that he had mono. We were told that adults who get mono can get very severe symptoms, and Matt proved to be no exception. Fate brought us together and love has kept us together. After a year of dating, Matt took me to our favorite Italian restaurant and ordered some wine. I am not a big drinker, so I was tipsy by the second glass. It was a beautiful night, so I suggested going to Central Park, which was nearby. He then took me to the spot at the castle where we had our first kiss. He took out his iPod, played our song, and asked me to dance. Suddenly, he got down on one knee and asked me to marry him. It was magical. It was so magical that we almost forgot that I spent the entire walk there talking about the high divorce rate. I don't know how that topic even came up, and I blame it all on the alcohol. We were married on August 2, 2012. We had planned an outdoor wedding, but to my horror the skies opened up that morning and didn't stop. Although the wedding didn't go as I planned, the sun did come out during the reception, and we were able to go outside. Despite the anger I felt about the rain, our wedding was magical. I wouldn't change a thing about our love story. Our wedding was very symbolic of marriage. Whatever your dreams of marriage might be, life will inevitably get in the way. I learned that although our love story is beautiful, what makes our love memorable is that we navigate life's roadblocks together. It still amazes me that somehow, against all odds, a guy I never would have met under any normal circumstances became the man I now call my husband. That's the beauty of life. It may throw curveballs, as well as mano and rainstorms, at you, but sometimes it also throws you a home run. Today he wants to leave me. I don't know what to do. Where to go. I regret for what I have done. Between me and Baltaser. My family not want me to there anymore. I don't want to do now.